She asked a man on the street for help to give birth to her baby, but she didn't know he was a doctor. The rain fell like tiny needles against Amelia Young's skin as she stumbled down Main Street in Millbrook Falls, one hand clutching her swollen belly, the other gripping the rough brick wall beside her. The contractions were coming faster now, each one stealing her breath and buckling her knees. She'd been walking for 20 minutes since the bus had dropped her off 3 blocks from the free clinic, only to find it closed for renovation. "Please," she whispered to no one, to everyone, to God, if he was listening. Not here, not like this. At 26, Amelia had imagined her life would look different. She'd pictured a husband holding her hand in a sterile hospital room, nervous excitement dancing in his eyes. She'd envisioned her mother there, too, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, whispering encouragement. Instead, her mother was 2 years in the grave. Her boyfriend had vanished the moment she'd shown him the positive pregnancy test, and she was alone on a rain-soaked street in a town where she knew exactly 3 people, none of whom she could call at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Another contraction seized her, and this time Amelia cried out. Her knees hit the wet pavement, and she felt something give way inside her. Warm liquid rushed down her legs, mixing with the rain. Her water had broken. Terror clawed at her throat. The hospital was 15 blocks away, might as well have been 15 miles. She had $43 in her wallet and a cell phone with a cracked screen that had died 2 hours ago, because she couldn't afford to pay the electric bill and charge it at the same time. Through the haze of pain and rain, she saw a figure approaching, a man in an expensive-looking coat, walking with purpose, head down against the weather. Without thinking, driven by pure desperation, Amelia reached out and grabbed his pant leg. "Please," she gasped, "my baby! I need help!" The man stopped abruptly, and Amelia looked up into a face that seemed carved from stone, all sharp angles and serious eyes the color of storm clouds. He was young, maybe early 30s, with dark hair plastered to his forehead by the rain. For a moment he simply stared at her, and Amelia saw something flicker across his features. Shock, recognition, fear. "How far apart are your contractions?" His voice was steady, clinical, nothing like the panic Amelia felt coursing through her own veins. I don't know. A minute? 2? She could barely think through the pain. The man crouched beside her, seemingly unbothered by the rain or the puddle forming around them. His hands moved to her wrist, fingers finding her pulse with practiced ease. "I'm going to help you. My name is William. Can you tell me your name?" "Amelia. Amelia Young. Amelia, I need you to breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth." He demonstrated, his own breathing slow and measured. Despite everything, Amelia found herself following his lead, found her panic receding just enough to think clearly. "We need to get you out of this rain," William said, glancing around. They were in front of a small bookstore, closed for the night. Across the street, the warm lights of the Copper Kettle Diner glowed invitingly. "Can you walk?" Amelia shook her head. "I don't think so. It hurts too much, and I'm so tired." Without hesitation, William shrugged out of his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. Then, with surprising gentleness for someone so obviously uncomfortable, he slipped one arm under her knees and the other around her back. "I'm going to carry you to that diner. They'll have a phone, and we can call for help." "I can't afford," Amelia began. But another contraction cut her off, and she buried her face against William's shoulder, breathing in the scent of expensive cologne and rain. "Don't worry about that now," he said, his voice softer than before. "Just focus on breathing." William carried her across the street as though she weighed nothing, despite her pregnancy and the rain-soaked clothes that clung to both of them. He shouldered open the door to the Copper Kettle with more force than necessary, and suddenly they were inside, surrounded by warmth and the smell of coffee and pie. Betsy Morrison, the owner, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and steel-grey hair, looked up from where she was wiping down the counter. Her eyes widened. "Sweet Jesus! She's in labor," William said, his calm authority cutting through the moment. "We need to call 911, and I need clean towels, hot water, and a clean flat surface." Betsy didn't hesitate. "Tommy!" she called to the young man in the kitchen. "Call 911 now! Tell them we have a woman in active labor at the Copper Kettle." William carried Amelia to the largest booth and laid her down as gently as if she were made of glass. His hands moved efficiently, checking her pulse again, timing her contractions. Amelia watched him through tears and pain, seeing something she hadn't noticed before, the slight tremor in his fingers, the tightness around his mouth that suggested this wasn't as easy for him as he was making it seem. "You're a doctor," she said. It wasn't a question. William's jaw clenched. It's complicated." "Complicated?" Amelia laughed, a sound somewhere between hysteria and genuine amusement. "Everything about tonight is complicated." Another contraction seized her, stronger than the others, and she grabbed William's hand without thinking. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady, an anchor in the storm of pain washing over her. "The ambulance is 10 minutes out," Betsy said, appearing with an armful of clean dish towels. "Storm's got half the roads flooded." William's expression didn't change, but Amelia felt his grip on her hand tighten imperceptibly. "We might not have 10 minutes. "What does that mean?" Panic rose in Amelia's chest again. "It means," William said, his voice gentle but firm, "that I'm going to need you to trust me. Can you do that, Amelia?" She looked into his eyes, those serious storm-grey eyes that held something she couldn't quite name. Pain, maybe, loss, understanding, and beneath it all, a determination that made her believe, against all reason, that everything might actually be okay. "Yes," she whispered, "I trust you." William nodded once, then turned to Betsy. "Clear that table in the back. We're going to need more light and more space." He looked back at Amelia, and for just a moment, she saw his carefully constructed mask slip. "You're going to be fine," he said, and she wasn't sure if he was trying to convince her or himself. "Both of you." As Betsy and Tommy rushed to prepare, as another contraction built inside her, Amelia held onto William's hand and wondered who this stranger was, this man who carried himself like someone running from something but had stopped to help her anyway. This man whose hands shook slightly even as they moved with the confidence of someone who had done this 100 times before. "Thank you," she managed between breaths. William's expression softened, just for a moment. "Don't thank me yet. We still have work to do." But as he helped her to the table Betsy had prepared, as he rolled up his sleeves and began washing his hands in the industrial sink, Amelia felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope. For the first time in 9 long months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't quite as alone as she thought. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and inside the Copper Kettle, 2 broken people began a journey neither of them expected, a journey that would change everything they thought they knew about love, loss, and the possibility of redemption. The story of Amelia Young and William Scott was just beginning. The next contraction hit like a freight train, and Amelia heard herself scream. William was there immediately, his hands cool against her fevered skin, his voice cutting through her panic. "Look at me, Amelia. Look right at me." When her eyes found his, he continued, "You're doing beautifully. Everything is progressing normally. Your baby is healthy and strong. I can hear the heartbeat clearly." "How can you—" she gasped, but he was already reaching into his pocket, pulling out what looked like a small device. "Portable fetal Doppler," he explained, his voice taking on that clinical tone again. "I always carry it. Old habit." Something flickered across his face. Grief, maybe, or regret. But it was gone before Amelia could be sure. "Why would you carry something like that if you're not practicing?" The question came out sharper than she intended, but the pain made her bold. William's hands stilled for just a moment. "Because some habits are harder to break than others." He adjusted the towels beneath her. "Now, I need to check your progress. Is that okay?" Amelia nodded, too exhausted to do anything else. As William worked with professional efficiency, she found herself studying him. Despite his expensive clothes, now ruined by rain and the chaos of emergency childbirth, and his obvious wealth evident in everything from his watch to his bearing, There was something haunted about him. Something that spoke of loss so deep it had carved hollows beneath his eyes and lines around his mouth. "You're fully dilated," William announced, and there was something like awe in his voice. "Amelia, your baby is coming. When the next contraction hits, I need you to push." "I'm scared," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. William met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw past the professional mask to the man beneath. "I know, but you're not alone. I'm right here, and I won't leave you. I promise." Something in his voice told her he didn't make promises lightly. Something in his voice told her he'd broken promises before, and it had destroyed him. Betsy appeared at her side, taking her hand. "I've got you, honey. I raised 3 babies of my own. You can do this." The contraction built, and William's voice guided her through it. "Now, Amelia, push now." She pushed, bearing down with everything she had, feeling like she was being torn in two. The pain was unimaginable, beyond anything she'd prepared herself for in those free prenatal classes at the community center. "Good, that's good," William encouraged. "I can see the head. Dark hair, lots of it. Your baby's beautiful already." Despite everything, Amelia laughed, a choked, painful sound. "You can't possibly tell that." "Trust me," William said, and there was a smile in his voice, the first she'd heard. "I've delivered enough babies to know." "How many?" 247. The number came automatically, then his face shuttered again. Before what? But another contraction was building, and William's attention was fully on her body, on the baby making its way into the world. "Push, Amelia." One more big push. She pushed, screaming, squeezing Betsy's hand so hard she was sure she'd break bones. The pain peaked, unbearable, impossible, and then a cry, high and indignant and perfect. "It's a girl," William announced, his voice rough with emotion. "Amelia, you have a daughter." Through her tears, Amelia watched as William wrapped her baby in clean towels, his hands gentle and sure, despite their slight tremor. He cleared the infant's airway with practiced ease, and the baby's cries grew stronger, more insistent. "She's healthy," William said, and Amelia heard wonder in his voice. 10 fingers, 10 toes, strong lungs. She's perfect. He placed the baby on Amelia's chest, and the moment their skin touched, something in Amelia's heart cracked open. All the fear, all the loneliness, all the doubt of the past 9 months, it didn't disappear, but it was suddenly overshadowed by a love so fierce it took her breath away. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered, touching the impossibly soft cheek. "Hi, my beautiful girl. I'm your mama." The baby's eyes opened, dark blue, unfocused, searching. One tiny hand reached up, grasping at air, and Amelia offered her finger. The baby's grip was surprisingly strong. "She knows you," William said softly. He was cleaning up with the efficiency of someone who'd done this countless times, but his eyes kept drifting back to the baby. "She's been listening to your voice for months. You're her whole world." Amelia looked up at him. This stranger who had appeared in her darkest moment like an answer to a prayer she hadn't known how to pray. "Thank you doesn't seem like enough." William's expression was complicated, joy and pain tangled together. "It's more than enough." He paused, then added quietly, "It's been a long time since I've done this. I wasn't sure I could." "Why did you stop?" The question hung in the air between them, and for a moment Amelia thought he wouldn't answer. Then sirens wailed outside, growing closer, and the moment passed. The paramedics burst in, professional and efficient, full of questions. William answered them all with clinical precision, using terms Amelia didn't understand. They listened to him with respect, calling him doctor, despite his earlier insistence that he was nothing of the sort. As they prepared to transport Amelia and the baby to the hospital, she found herself reaching for William's hand. "Will you come with us?" Something vulnerable crossed his face. "I don't think that's—" "Please!" Amelia squeezed his hand. "I don't have anyone else, and she should know the man who brought her into the world." William looked down at their joined hands, then at the baby sleeping peacefully against Amelia's chest. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll follow in my car." At the hospital, they were separated, Amelia and the baby to a room for observation, William to the waiting area. A nurse practitioner examined both mother and child, declaring them healthy and stable. "That man who helped you," the nurse said, making notes on her chart. "Dr. Scott. He did everything perfectly. You're very lucky he was there." "Dr. Scott," Amelia repeated. "He said his name was William. Dr. William Scott. He used to be one of the best OB-GYNs in the state before he left the profession." The nurse looked like she wanted to say more, but thought better of it. "Get some rest, honey. You've been through a lot tonight." But Amelia couldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw William's face, the way he'd looked at her daughter with such longing and such pain. She needed to know his story. More than that, she needed to thank him properly, to understand why a man who carried a fetal Doppler in his pocket had stopped practicing medicine. When the nurse finally said she could have visitors, Amelia asked for William immediately. The woman's expression grew uncertain. "He's not in the waiting room anymore, dear. He left about an hour ago." Disappointment crashed over Amelia. "Did he leave a message? A phone number?" "No, nothing, I'm sorry." Amelia looked down at her daughter, now cleaned and swaddled in a hospital blanket. "I don't even know how to find him," she whispered to the baby. "How do I thank the man who saved us both?" But even as she spoke, she realized it wasn't just gratitude she felt. Something had passed between them in that diner, something more than the emergency that had brought them together. She'd seen his brokenness and recognized it because it matched her own. She'd seen his capacity for gentleness despite his pain. She'd seen, in those few intense hours, a man worth knowing. "We'll find him," she told her daughter. "Somehow, we'll find him." Outside her window, the rain had stopped, and the first hints of dawn were breaking over Millbrook Falls. It was a new day, a new beginning. Amelia Young was a mother now, and somehow, against all odds, she felt stronger than she had in years. But somewhere in this small town was a broken man who had given her everything and asked for nothing in return. A man who had delivered her daughter with hands that shook and eyes that held ghosts. A man named William Scott, who carried medical equipment in his pockets but refused to call himself a doctor. Amelia didn't know his story yet, but she was determined to learn it, because something told her that just as he had saved her tonight, maybe, just maybe, she could save him too. 3 days later, Amelia stood in front of the Scott Medical Foundation building on Elm Street. Her daughter, whom she'd named Grace, for the grace that had brought them through that terrible night, sleeping peacefully in a second-hand carrier against her chest. The building was impressive, all glass and steel, with Scott Medical Foundation supporting maternal and infant health emblazoned across the entrance. She'd learned about it from Betsy at the diner, who'd insisted on bringing Amelia a week's worth of meals and had filled her in on the local gossip. William Scott was the millionaire son of renowned obstetricians Margaret and Robert Scott, both deceased. He'd been following in their footsteps, a rising star in maternal-fetal medicine, until 2 years ago when everything had fallen apart. "Nobody talks about what happened," Betsy had said, her voice low. "But whatever it was, it broke him. He shut down his practice, stopped seeing patients, and just disappeared into that foundation. Throws money at problems instead of fixing them with his own 2 hands. Now, standing here, Amelia understood she was about to intrude on a man's carefully constructed fortress of grief. But she'd been discharged from the hospital with a clean bill of health and a stack of bills she couldn't pay. She'd swallowed her pride before. She could do it again. Except this time, it wasn't just pride driving her. It was something else. Something that had taken root in her heart the moment William had looked at her daughter with tears in his eyes. The receptionist tried to turn her away. "Mr. Scott doesn't take meetings without appointments. Tell him Amelia Young is here. He'll know the name." The woman's expression shifted to recognition, then sympathy. "You're the woman from the diner. I heard about that night. Let me see what I can do." 10 minutes later, Amelia was being escorted to the top floor, to an office that was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Millbrook Falls. William stood with his back to her, shoulders rigid, hands clasped behind his back. "You shouldn't be here." His voice was flat, controlled. "I came to say thank you, properly." You already did, at the diner. He still hadn't turned around. I assume you and the baby are healthy? Grace. Her name is Grace. Amelia moved closer and William finally turned. He looked worse than he had that night. There were dark circles under his eyes and his face was drawn. And yes, we're both fine, thanks to you. William's gaze went to the baby and Amelia saw his careful control waver. Grace, that's a good name. She's why I'm here. Amelia took a breath. I can't afford the hospital bills, Mr. Scott. I tried to set up a payment plan, but even that's beyond my means. I worked 2 part-time jobs. I did anyway before Grace came, and I'm barely keeping my head above water. I know you run a foundation that helps with medical expenses, and I'm not too proud to ask for help, not when it's for her. Something like pain flashed across William's face. The foundation will cover your expenses, all of them. My assistant will handle the paperwork. Just like that? Just like that. He moved to his desk, putting distance between them. Is there anything else? There was so much else. 1,000 questions Amelia wanted to ask, 1,000 things she wanted to say. But Grace chose that moment to wake up, letting out a small cry that filled the cavernous office. William froze, his entire body going rigid. You should go. Instead, Amelia lifted Grace from the carrier, bouncing her gently. She's probably hungry. Do you mind if I feed her here? It'll just take a few minutes. William looked trapped, tortured. Yes, of course. Please sit. Amelia settled into one of the leather chairs and adjusted her shirt, allowing Grace to nurse. The baby latched on eagerly, and Amelia stroked her soft head, watching William over the top of Grace's dark curls. He was staring at them with such naked longing that it hurt to see. Why did you stop practicing medicine? The question came out softer than she'd intended. William's jaw clenched. That's not your concern. Maybe not, but I think about it. I think about how your hands shook when you delivered Grace, but you did it anyway. I think about how you said it had been a long time, but you knew exactly what to do. I think about a man who carries medical equipment in his pockets but won't call himself a doctor. Stop. I think about whatever pain you're carrying that's so heavy you can't even look at my daughter for more than a few seconds without it breaking something inside you. I said stop! William's voice cracked and he turned away, bracing himself against the window. You don't know anything about me. Then tell me. Amelia's voice was gentle now. Tell me what happened. The silence stretched so long that Amelia thought he wouldn't answer. Then quietly, almost too quietly to hear, I lost a patient, a mother, and her baby. Both of them. The words hung in the air, heavy with grief. Amelia waited, letting him find the strength to continue. Her name was Sarah. William's voice was hollow now, distant. She was my patient, but she was also my fiancée. We were going to get married after the baby came. We'd picked out names, Emma for a girl, James for a boy. We had the nursery painted. We had everything planned. Amelia's heart clenched. What happened? Placental abruption. It came on suddenly during her 3rd trimester. We were at home, and I knew immediately something was wrong. I got her to the hospital, did everything right, everything by the book. His hands were fisted against the window. But sometimes everything right isn't enough. We lost the baby first. Emma, she was a girl, and then Sarah started hemorrhaging, and I couldn't stop it. I tried everything, every procedure, every technique, but I couldn't save her. William, I held her hand while she died, the woman I loved, the mother of my child, and I couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. He finally turned to face her, and the anguish in his eyes was devastating. I haven't delivered a baby since that night. Haven't practiced medicine. Couldn't. Every time I tried, I saw Sarah, heard the monitor flatlining, felt her hand go cold in mine. Amelia adjusted Grace, who had fallen asleep nursing, and stood. She walked to William slowly, giving him time to back away. He didn't. Until 3 nights ago, she said softly. You delivered Grace. I had no choice. You always have a choice. You could have called 911 and waited with me. You could have offered comfort but not intervention. Instead, you became a doctor again because someone needed you to be. William shook his head. It wasn't the same, wasn't it? Amelia shifted Grace so William could see her better. Look at her. Really look at her. This baby is alive because you found the courage to be who you were meant to be, even when it terrified you. That's not nothing, William. That's everything. William's eyes fixed on Grace, and Amelia watched something crack in his carefully constructed armor. She looks peaceful, content. She is, because she's loved. Amelia paused. Sarah would want you to keep living, wouldn't she? To keep helping people? Don't! The word was sharp. Don't tell me what Sarah would want. You're right. I didn't know her, but I know you. I saw you that night, saw how much it cost you to help me, and how you did it anyway. That's who you are, William Scott. Not the man hiding in this office, throwing money at problems. You're the man who gets his hands dirty, who shows up when people need him most. William's composure finally shattered. He turned away, but not before Amelia saw the tears. I can't go back. I can't be that person again. You already are. Amelia touched his shoulder gently. You just need to forgive yourself for being human. They stood like that for a long moment, William with his back to her, shoulders shaking with silent sobs, and Amelia with one hand on his shoulder and the other cradling the baby he'd brought into the world. Outside, Millbrook Falls carried on with its daily business, unaware that in this office, two broken people were beginning to heal. Finally, William turned. His eyes were red, but there was something different in them now, something that hadn't been there before. I don't know how to do that, he admitted. Neither do I, Amelia said honestly. I'm 26, unemployed, single, and I just had a baby in a diner. I don't have my life figured out, but maybe we could figure it out together? Why would you want that? You don't know me. I know enough. I know you're kind. I know you're strong. I know you're hurting, but you're not broken beyond repair. She smiled. And I know you make a pretty good birth coach in a pinch. Despite everything, William laughed. A short, surprised sound. Is that what we're calling it? Emergency medical intervention sounds so formal. They looked at each other, and Amelia felt it again. That connection, that recognition of shared pain and possibility. Grace stirred between them, making soft baby noises, and William reached out tentatively, touching one tiny hand with his finger. Grace's fingers closed around his, holding on. She's strong, William murmured. She is. Like her mother, like the doctor who delivered her. William looked up at Amelia, and for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled, really smiled. I'm not your savior, Amelia. Good, she replied, because I'm not looking for one. But maybe you could be my friend. Grace is too. William was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. I think I'd like that. I think I'd like that very much. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Amelia had expected. William became a fixture in her life, not as the millionaire benefactor she'd feared he might become, but as something far more valuable, a friend. He showed up at her tiny apartment above the hardware store with groceries, never making a big deal of it. I was at the store anyway, he'd say, though they both knew it was a lie. He brought books about infant development, always careful to ask if she wanted them rather than assuming. And sometimes he just sat with her while she fed Grace or folded laundry, talking about nothing and everything. It was during one of these visits, 4 weeks after Grace's birth, that Amelia learned more about the foundation. My parents started it, William explained, holding Grace while Amelia heated up leftover soup. The baby had taken to him immediately, seeming to sense the gentleness beneath his reserved exterior. They wanted to ensure that no woman went without prenatal care due to financial constraints. After they died in a car accident 5 years ago, I took it over. And then you stopped practicing to run it full-time? Not exactly. William's expression grew distant. After Sarah died, I couldn't go back to the hospital. Couldn't face delivering babies when I'd failed so completely to save my own child, my own fiancé. The foundation became a penance, I suppose, a way to help without having to actually be present for the messy human parts. Amelia brought over 2 bowls of soup and sat across from him. But you were present for Grace, for me. I didn't plan to be. When you grabbed my pant leg that night, my first instinct was to call 911 and leave. But then I looked at you, so scared and alone, and I saw Sarah. Not literally, but I saw what it meant to be terrified and in pain and desperate for help. I couldn't walk away. I'm glad you didn't. Amelia reached across the table, touching his free hand. Grace is lucky to have you in her life. I'm lucky to have you in my life. William's eyes met hers, and something passed between them. Something warm and tentative and full of possibility. But before either could speak, Grace let out an indignant cry, demanding attention. They both laughed, and the moment passed. But it came back, again and again, in small ways. The way William's eyes lingered on Amelia when he thought she wasn't looking, the way her heart sped up when he smiled, the comfortable silence between them that spoke of understanding deeper than words. 2 months after Grace's birth, William invited Amelia to dinner at his house. Nothing fancy, he assured her. I just thought it might be nice to cook for someone other than myself. His house was a revelation, a beautiful Victorian on the edge of town, filled with light and warmth despite its size. But what caught Amelia's attention was the closed door at the end of the upstairs hallway. "What's in there?" she asked, Grace asleep in her carrier. William's expression shuttered. "Nothing, just a room I don't use." But Amelia could see the lie in his eyes. It was the nursery, wasn't it? For Emma. William didn't answer, just turned and walked back downstairs. Amelia followed, knowing she'd pushed too hard, but unable to take it back. Dinner was quiet, awkward. William was withdrawn, and Amelia felt the distance between them like a physical thing. Finally, as she prepared to leave, William caught her arm. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't deserve that. It's just, I understand. I shouldn't have pried." "No, you should have. You do. Pry, I mean." William ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I've spent 2 years avoiding anything that reminds me of Sarah and Emma. I've kept their room exactly as it was, like a shrine, but I can't bear to look at it. I've dated no one, befriended no one, let myself care about nothing except abstract numbers on foundation reports. And then you came into my life, you and Grace, and suddenly I'm feeling things again, wanting things, and it terrifies me." Amelia's heart raced. "What do you want, William?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. "I want to be able to walk into that room without falling apart. I want to deliver babies again, to help families the way I helped you. I want to wake up in the morning without Sarah's death being the first thing I think about." He paused. "And I want you, Amelia. I want you and Grace in my life, not just as friends. But I don't know if I'm capable of that. If I'm healed enough, strong enough." Amelia shifted Grace in her arms and stepped closer to William. "I'm scared too. My last relationship ended with me pregnant and alone. I've built walls just like you have, convinced myself that Grace and I were better off without anyone else. But these past 2 months with you, William, you've shown me what it means to be cared for, to be seen as more than just a struggling single mother. You've shown Grace what it means to be cherished. I don't want to hurt you, either of you. And I don't want to hurt you. But hiding from life isn't living, is it? We're both so afraid of more pain that we're choosing numbness instead. But that night in the diner, when you delivered Grace, you chose differently. You chose to feel, to risk, to show up even when it terrified you." William reached up, cupping her face with one hand. "What if I fail you? What if something happens and I freeze and I can't help when you need me most? Then we'll figure it out together. That's what love is, William. It's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about showing up, even when you're scared, especially when you're scared. Love." His voice was barely a whisper. Amelia's cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. "I'm falling in love with you. I have been since that first night, if I'm honest. And I know it's complicated, and I know we both have baggage, but I also know that what I feel for you is real." William's thumb traced her cheekbone, his eyes searching hers. "I'm falling for you too, for both of you. It feels like betraying Sarah, like I'm replacing what I lost." "You're not replacing anything. You're making room for something new. Sarah will always be part of your story, William. Emma will always be your daughter, even though you never got to hold her. But their story doesn't have to be your only story. Tears slipped down William's cheeks, and Amelia wiped them away gently. Grace stirred between them, making soft baby noises, and they both laughed through their tears. "She has terrible timing," William said. "She has perfect timing," Amelia corrected. "She's reminding us what we're fighting for, a future, a family, a family." William tested the words, and something in his expression shifted. "I want that. God help me, I want that so much." "Then let's try, one day at a time. No promises we can't keep, no expectations we can't meet. Just us, figuring it out together." William nodded slowly, then leaned down and kissed her forehead, soft and sweet and full of promise. "One day at a time," he agreed. That night, after Amelia and Grace had gone home, William stood in front of the closed nursery door for the first time in 2 years. His hand shook as he turned the knob, and his heart raced as the door swung open. The room was exactly as he and Sarah had left it. Pale yellow walls, white furniture, stuffed animals arranged on shelves. Emma's name in wooden letters above the crib. For a moment, the grief was overwhelming, crushing. William sank to the floor, sobbing for all he'd lost, for the life that should have been. But this time, something was different. This time, the grief didn't consume him entirely. This time, mixed in with the sorrow, there was something else. Gratitude. For the time he'd had with Sarah, however brief, for the love they'd shared, for the man that love had made him, a man capable of helping a desperate woman on a rainy street, of opening his heart again, despite the risk. "I'll always love you," William whispered into the empty nursery. "Both of you. But I'm choosing to live again. I think you'd want that for me." The room didn't answer, but in the silence, William felt something shift. Not forgetting. He would never forget. But forgiving. Forgiving himself for being human, for surviving when they hadn't, for wanting a future even after such devastating loss. He stood, legs shaky, and looked around the room one more time. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would begin the process of transforming this shrine into something else. Not erasing the past, but making room for the future. Maybe a playroom for Grace. Maybe someday a room for another child. The thought didn't hurt as much as it once had. William turned off the light and closed the door, but this time he didn't lock it. Progress, he thought. Small, painful progress. The next morning, Amelia received a text. "Would you and Grace like to come to the foundation office today? I have something to show you." When they arrived, William led them to a different room, smaller than his office, with a comfortable couch and soft lighting. Medical equipment lined one wall, and there was a changing table in the corner. "What is this?" Amelia asked. "I'm going back to medicine," William said, nervous energy radiating from him. "Not full-time, not yet, but the foundation is starting a free prenatal clinic, and I'm going to run it. See patients 1 or 2 days a week to start. Help women like you who need care but can't afford it." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "William, that's wonderful. I couldn't have done it without you, without Grace. You showed me that hiding from my calling wasn't honoring Sarah's memory. It was betraying it. She loved that I was a doctor. She loved watching me help bring life into the world. The best way to honor her is to keep doing that work." He crossed to them, taking Amelia's hands in his. "I love you, Amelia Young. I love your strength and your courage, and the way you see right through my walls to who I really am. I love how you're raising Grace with such determination and grace, no pun intended. And I love that you don't need me to save you, but you let me stand beside you anyway." "I love you too," Amelia whispered. "I love your kindness and your broken places, and how hard you're working to heal. I love that you see Grace and me as people worth knowing, worth caring for. I love that you're brave enough to try again." They kissed then, soft and slow, with Grace cooing happily between them. It wasn't a fairy tale kiss that solved all their problems. They both still had healing to do, walls to dismantle, fears to face, but it was a beginning, a promise, a choice to love despite the risk, to live despite the pain, to believe that broken things could be made beautiful again. Outside the window, Millbrook Falls carried on, unaware that in this small room, two wounded souls had found each other and decided to build something new. Not a replacement for what they'd lost, but something uniquely their own. A family forged not from perfection, but from shared scars and second chances, and the courage to hope for better days. 6 months later, Amelia stood in the newly renovated nursery of William's Victorian house. Their house now, though she was still getting used to thinking of it that way. Grace, now 9 months old and crawling everywhere, played on a soft rug in the center of the room, babbling happily to her stuffed animals. The room had been transformed from a shrine to the past into a celebration of the present. The pale yellow walls remained, but now they were adorned with photos, Grace's newborn pictures, snapshots of the three of them together, and yes, a beautiful framed photograph of Sarah and William, honoring what had been without being consumed by it. Emma's wooden letters had been carefully preserved in a memory box, replaced by Grace's name above the crib. But on the bookshelf sat two special items: a journal where William wrote letters to the daughter he'd never met, and a delicate silver rattle that had been meant for Emma, now loved and played with by Grace. "You did a beautiful job with the room," Betsy said, appearing in the doorway with a tray of coffee. She'd become a fixture in their lives, a surrogate grandmother to Grace and a wise friend to both William and Amelia. "William did most of it," Amelia said, accepting a cup gratefully. "It was important to him that Grace grow up knowing about Emma and Sarah, that they're part of our family story. That man has come a long way, you both have." Betsy settled into the rocking chair, watching Grace with a fond smile. "I remember when you stumbled into my diner, scared and alone. Look at you now." Amelia laughed, but there was emotion behind it. "I still can't believe how much has changed. I have a job now, working as the patient coordinator at William's clinic. I have a home. I have a family. You have love," Betsy corrected. "The rest is just details." Downstairs, the front door opened, and William's voice called up, "I'm home, and I brought someone special." Amelia's heart skipped. She knew what this meant. For weeks, William had been talking about it, working up the courage. She scooped Grace up and headed downstairs, Betsy following. In the foyer stood William, still in his white coat from the clinic, and beside him was a woman Amelia had seen only in photographs, Sarah's mother, Eleanor. The resemblance was striking. The same gentle eyes, the same warm smile that William had described so many times. But where Sarah's photos showed youth and vitality, Eleanor carried the weight of loss in the lines around her eyes. "Eleanor," William said, his voice thick with emotion, "this is Amelia, and this is Grace." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the baby. "She's beautiful, absolutely beautiful." She turned to Amelia. "William has told me so much about you, about how you helped him find his way back." "He saved us first," Amelia said softly. "On a rainy night when I had nowhere else to turn." Eleanor reached out tentatively, and Amelia understood. She transferred Grace into the older woman's arms, watching as Eleanor cradled the baby with practiced ease, tears streaming down her face. "When William called and said he wanted me to meet you, to meet Grace, I was afraid," Eleanor admitted. "Afraid it would hurt too much, seeing him with another woman, another child. But looking at him now," she glanced at William, who stood watching with his own tears falling freely, "I see my son-in-law alive again. I see the man Sarah loved, the doctor she was so proud of. She would be so happy that you found each other." "I hope so," William said, moving to stand beside Amelia, taking her hand. "I hope she knows that loving Amelia doesn't mean I've forgotten her, that Grace in my life doesn't replace Emma in my heart." "Oh, my dear boy." Eleanor shifted Grace to one arm and reached out to cup William's cheek. "Sarah knew you better than anyone. She would never want you to spend your life alone, trapped in grief. She'd want exactly this, For you to heal, to love again, to help bring babies into the world the way you helped bring Grace into it. They stood there, the four of them. 5, counting Betsy, who was crying quietly in the background, connected by loss and love and the determination to keep living despite the pain. Later, after Eleanor had gone home with promises to return soon, after Betsy had left with a final hug for everyone, after Grace was finally asleep in her crib, Amelia and William sat together on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge over Millbrook Falls. "I delivered 3 babies at the clinic today," William said, wonder in his voice. 3 healthy babies, 3 grateful families. And I didn't freeze. I didn't panic. I just did what I was trained to do. "I'm so proud of you," Amelia said, leaning against his shoulder. "I couldn't have done it without you. You gave me a reason to try again, to believe I could be more than my grief." Amelia lifted her head to look at him. "We saved each other, William. That's what love does. It doesn't make us perfect, but it makes us brave enough to try." William reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Amelia's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "I know we've only known each other for 9 months, William said, his voice shaking slightly. "I know we've both been broken, both been scared, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you and Grace. I want to build a family together, to face whatever comes together. Amelia Young, will you marry me?" Amelia's tears fell freely now, joy and disbelief and overwhelming love all tangled together. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." As William slipped the ring onto her finger as they kissed under the stars, Amelia thought about that rainy night 9 months ago. She'd been terrified, alone, certain that she'd reached the end of her rope. She never could have imagined that the stranger she grabbed on Main Street would become the love of her life. But life, she had learned, was full of unexpected grace. It was full of second chances and new beginnings and the possibility of redemption even in our darkest moments. "I love you," she whispered against William's lips. "I love you too, both of you, forever." And as if on cue, Grace's cry echoed through the baby monitor, demanding attention with the imperious authority of a 9-month-old who knew she was loved. They laughed, and William stood offering Amelia his hand. "Shall we?" "Together," Amelia agreed, taking his hand. "Always together." They walked inside toward their daughter, toward their future, toward the life they were building from the broken pieces of their pasts. It wouldn't always be easy. There would still be hard days, moments of grief, challenges to face, but they would face them together, 2 wounded healers who had found in each other the courage to love again. In Millbrook Falls, in a beautiful Victorian house that had once held only ghosts, but now rang with laughter and life, a family was being born. Not from perfection, but from persistence. Not from forgetting the past, but from honoring it while building something new. Amelia Young had asked a stranger for help on the worst night of her life. William Scott had chosen to answer, despite his fear. And in that moment of connection, 2 broken souls had begun to heal. This was their story, a story of grace and redemption, of loss and love, of the courage it takes to hope when hope seems impossible. A story that began with a cry for help in the rain and would continue for all the years to come, written in the laughter of children, the quiet comfort of companionship, and the deep, abiding love of 2 people who had learned that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most broken places. Grace's cries turned to giggles as they entered her room together, and in that sound was everything, past and present, loss and hope, ending and beginning all at once. They were home. Finally, completely, beautifully home. The end. Sometimes the people who save us are the ones we save in return. Sometimes love finds us in our darkest moments and reminds us that healing is possible, that second chances are real, and that grace, in all its forms, is always available to those brave enough to reach out and ask for help.